It's great to have everyone joining. So many people, a lot of interest in today's event. Really looking forward to the conversation with Thomas and Christina, who are actually both joining us from Munich today by so great to see a German contingent joining. And my name's Joss Colchester. I'm with the SI team and the SI London Hub. I've got my colleague here, Yasmin, who's also joining. And I'm going to be hosting today's conversation as we talk about ecosystem building, the challenge, the opportunities, particularly in the context of addressing complex, wicked challenges. So systems innovation. I'm going to jump in actually in a minute. So I'm not going to be talking a lot myself, but I'm really looking forward to hearing from Thomas and Christina. We are recording today's event. It'll be about an hour long. And I'm going to hear a little introduction to Christina and her organization, Endeva, and the kind of work that they do. That'll be about 12 minutes. We'll then hear from Thomas and Deep Ecosystem, the work that they do. Then we're going to have a bit of a conversation. I'm going to pose some questions. We'll talk to our two guests today for maybe 20 minutes, and then there'll be space for everyone else to questions. You can do that as we go along in the chat here in Zoom, and yes, we'll pick those up or do so towards the end. We'll have minutes or so at the end to have those questions for our speakers. And today's just short, just 1 hour. I think it's going to go quite quickly. I think lots of ideas are going to pop out here, so really looking forward to it. And we're going to jump straight in, actually. So great to have you joining, Christina. We'll start with you, and we'd love to hear more about yourself, your background, what you're doing with Endeva, and the work that you do around building.
Yeah, thank you, Joss. It's great to have the opportunity to talk about ecosystems today here in this round. I'm Christina Tewes-Gradl. I set up Endeva now 16 years ago as a company to work on, back then, inclusive business models, so new business solutions in the context of poverty in Africa and Asia. And in the meantime, we've pivoted to work more on system innovations. We do a lot of facilitation of complex partnership, complex innovation processes, and ecosystems is an important concept in our work. And before I jump to my slides, I wanted to see who is familiar with the concept of ecosystems in this sector. You could just raise your hand if you're familiar already with what ecosystems are. Okay. Half, maybe. Yeah, that's good.
They can maybe put in the chat on a 1 to 10 scale. Where would you put yourself with your familiarity? 1, you don't know much. 10, you're a real expert and you should be speaking here. Okay, we've got a 4, 3, 4, 9. Okay, 7. Okay.
Yeah, it's pretty good. Yeah. Great. Yeah. So ecosystem really nowadays is a very common term. I remember back in 2007 when I wrote the first report for UNDP on how business in the context of poverty works. I really wanted to use the idea of ecosystem because what we found in our research was that it's super important what kind of, not just what infrastructure and regulation was around these businesses, but also which kind of actors. And everybody advised against us because everybody said it would be super confusing to talk about ecosystems. It's a biological concept and so on. And this is only 16 years ago. So when I was preparing for today's presentation, I thought it's fascinating how quickly the term has caught on and how normal it is for us to think about ecosystems, because it's just a very useful term to describe the complexity of interactions that we're grappling with when we think about system change and system innovation. So I've prepared a couple of slides to talk about experiences in our work on how we are building ecosystems. I hope you can see them. Do you see them full screen?
Yeah,
great. Has it moved? Excellent. Yep. Okay, so maybe a few words more about Endeva. So as I said, we're a consultancy. We're based out of Berlin and working mainly in the global south on systems innovations that serve people and planet. We've been around for more than 15 years and have been doing projects with all kinds of partners. We work a lot with the public sector, especially development partners like the UN, like the World Bank, or the German ministry, but also large corporates. Yeah, and we're proud to be a certified B Corp, one of the first ones in Europe. So we're really a mission-led organization. And ecosystems, as I said, has always been an important idea for us, an important concept, because when we think system innovations, we usually talk about a concerted actions of several players. So it's not something one, even the largest, even a nation, a government player could drive forward. You need a concerted action among a diversity of players. And usually these players are already connected in what we call an ecosystem, so a community or a network of interconnected and interdependent players. And at Endeva, we facilitate collaboration among these stakeholders so they can evolve together towards a desirable future for people and planet. So because ecosystems are so complex, they usually evolve rather organically. And then what we get is these undesired outcomes, be it pollution or poverty or whatever you may find. And what we try to do is that we bring the actors of an ecosystem into a room together to identify their shared vision and then concerted action towards that vision. We have been doing quite a lot of this work together with the United Nations Development Program. And together with them, we've developed what we call the ecosystem development approach. And you see one example here where we worked in Senegal to think and co-create with a diversity of actors how to improve access to solar energy services for low-income populations. So we brought together the solar companies that were already active in Senegal, relevant ministries from the government, impact investors, and also NGOs to explore the ecosystem and understand what are the current challenges, why is it difficult to reach the rural areas in particular. And then these actors came up with a list of activities to improve the landscape or for solar companies to reach the rural communities. And we, in this work with the UNDP, we always cluster these activities in the 4I: information, investment, implementation support, and incentives. And just to give you some examples, what they came up with in this group was that the government could help with tax exemptions. So there's now no VAT on solar equipment in Senegal. There's a harmonized electricity tariffs. So it's easier for rural communities to actually buy into off-grid solutions and not wait for the grid that never comes. There's a feed-in tariff as an additional incentive, and there's also very clear quality standards. So all of these innovations were brought into place by the government in communication with different players from the ecosystem. There was also training for technicians and a test laboratory for photovoltaic components. So yeah, quite specific interventions to facilitate the work of the solar companies in Senegal and as a result, make business in the rural communities more viable. This is the 4 steps of the ecosystem development approach. This is how we move, and we've been implementing this also in other countries and testing this and refining this approach, and it's documented. You find the source here in a UNDP report called Catalyzing Impact Through Business. So the first thing is always that we assess the current ecosystem. We map the ecosystem, we understand which players are active, what are the gaps, and which actions need to be taken for the desired outcome. So usually we start with a proposition like more solar energy for rural communities. And we start to bring the different stakeholders on board. Then there's the connect phase, where we run a couple of workshops to agree on a shared vision and an action plan. And then the third step is to act. So there's an action group. It's organized in different working groups, and there's a governance structure behind. So there's coordination among all these different actors. So in this case, we had 4 working groups that were looking at these 4 different aspects: information, implementation, support, and so on. And of course, yeah, it takes time to make changes, like changes in taxes or tariffs. So this phase lasts about 2 years. And then afterwards, there's the evolve phase, where the official facilitation steps away. And in the ideal scenario, actors would have learned to organize themselves, self-coordinate, and really keep on evolving the system as they require it. In the UNDP approach, alongside this ecosystem development approach, there's also an innovation challenge. The innovation challenge runs in the beginning of the process, during the assess and connect phase. And we have implemented it as a challenge award, also as a hackathon. And basically, it's to inspire local innovators to come up with relevant solutions. Like in the case of Senegal, one of the winners was a company called Najibi, and they implemented a solar village. They received $40,000, and their pilot was to develop a solar village. So not just individual houses with solar panels, but as you see here on the picture, there was street lighting. The little building here in front is the little mill where they can now mill with electric energy. The school has lighting, and many small interventions just to show what difference electricity makes to a village, and then to enable replication. And this innovation challenge is quite useful to give a certain momentum and energy to the whole process, because the startups that are part of the innovation challenge also contribute to this platform work. And at the same time, the people who are doing more this ecosystem and work to improve the conditions, they know who they do it for, because they have directly the stakeholders in the group. Maybe one more note on this is a fairly heavy process on the ground. It can take, from half a year up to 2 years of facilitation, depending on when we can pull out as facilitators. We also have a pretty light process that we run online, or sometimes with one on-site workshop, but often we do it fully online, and it's called IA 2030, Inclusive Innovation 2030. The purpose is the same: bringing an ecosystem of actors together to enable them to move towards a desired system innovation. And the 3 steps there are: we start with a consultation, a little bit similar. So we first assess, then we bring people together. Then we use system practice. I know that many of you are experts here probably in system innovation. So we really map the system in terms of the dynamics and where the leverage points might be. Then we run co-creation workshops with a theory approach. So really taking this group of stakeholders also in terms of the momentum and the energy towards that desirable future. And then implementation in this case is usually something that the stakeholders do by themselves. Where we get involved, we use the collective impact approach. So we act as the backbone and act as a secretariat for the complex partnership. And one example there that we just completed was on green hydrogen in Kenya, and also 2 other countries in Africa, where, just to give you an example, I think probably my time is running short. One result from the process in Kenya, and you see here the one result from the co-creation workshop, where we play a lot and try to get our hands dirty to get the intuition into this space, was to build a center of excellence for green hydrogen in Kenya. And this proposal by the local stakeholders is now part of the Kenyan strategy for green hydrogen, and is being taken forward by the local, by KenGen, the local utility. So very good momentum there. to actually make a change that can serve the whole ecosystem, and build a system for green hydrogen in Kenya. So yeah, basically we support along the process, in the design and the implementation, and also importantly in the evaluation, where we use the same methodologies. So we again work with the stakeholders to identify what are we learning here and how do we adapt our programming or our collaboration in the future. Yeah, this is how we see our assets. We've been working in Africa and Asia for many years. We work always with experts. We are a rather small company, and we work a lot with freelancers around the globe that bring the content expertise, but also the facilitation in cases. And then we have this diversity of partners and our methodologies. A quick glance on who we work with. I mentioned it in the beginning, so really across the different sectors. And yeah, it would be nice to also collaborate with some of you for an inclusive and regenerative future. So if you're interested in our work as partners, as clients, or in any other shape or form, you find my contacts here, and I look forward to hearing from you.
Great, thank you very much, Christina. That was a great presentation. And lots of stuff to talk about there, but we will come back to that after we hear from Thomas. So, Thomas, do you want to jump in?
Yes, thank you, Christina. Thank you for the presentation as well. Very, very interesting and inspiring. I would just now start from our side, and then maybe later we go in an interactive part discussing the different approaches. So let me share my screen. Okay. Do you see the presentation? Yes, okay, fantastic. So my name is Thomas Kösters. I'm from Deep Ecosystems, one of the co-founders and the CEO. Deep Ecosystems was founded by experienced players in the startup scene from different parts of the world, from South America, Europe. And what we set out to do is to help democratize innovation by helping to create innovation ecosystems in all the places in the world. So as with our main function, sorry, this presentation is not going forward. Just a second. It's not working, unfortunately, sorry. Let me then just share it as the PowerPoint here, then this will be also visible. Okay, so what we do at Deep is we invest in revolutionary ecosystem projects to solve the biggest challenges of our world. So our approach is a bit bottom up. It's different than, let's say, working with the key stakeholders from government side, etc. But we focus on the bottom up approach. We partner with entrepreneurs, with individuals who want to create ecosystems in their home regions and in their verticals that they are interested in. So the starting point really is the entrepreneur that says, I want to bring together a community of entrepreneurs. I want to create an ecosystem. We believe that this bottom-up movement is important to have the emergence of system change. And why is that? And I think some of you have know this, these models, the iceberg model here on the right-hand side that I'm showing. We want to get away from the old linear thinking that often motivates government strategies, where there is the idea that if you just go to a university and you put some venture capital fund up there and say clever people there should get just enough money and resources, and then they will be successful entrepreneurs. Getting away from that linear causal way of thinking to a systemic thinking, where you say, no, actually there is a whole system of variables that need to be in the right order, in the right shape for innovation to happen. So we want to put the focus on the system, and we want to put together the right ingredients bottom up. So that's why we go from, and let me skip that, we go from the ecosystem builder up. So the ecosystem builder is a person that organizes community activities, that is trying to raise a fund that didn't exist before with a hypothesis that didn't exist before, is an incubator manager that goes into a new market and has and brings a new type of doing business, a new way of doing business to a region. These are the players that build trust, that connect stakeholders, that pull in leaders, that evangelize ideas that have not been commonplace yet in the regional economy, and they create new rules of engagement for collaborative growth. And they are really the ones that are able to create the basis for a new driving market. But often these ecosystem builders are overlooked. They don't have the same status as a venture capital investor. They don't have the same recognition as a founder of a startup company. They are always kind of seen as, yeah, they are always around, they do things, they are very active, but they are not recognized as an integral part of the creation of new markets. And we want to change that, and we want to give the ecosystem builder the recognition and the support that they deserve, because also ecosystem builders need a network of peers, need a network of support, need an infrastructure to strive, and that's what Deep Ecosystems is all about. So our approach is not to accelerate startups, but is to accelerate ecosystem builders, and that's where we get started from the local leaders. No matter what they do, if they create a new foundation that focus on supporting diversity, if it's a grassroots organization that trains social skills, is it a university, is it an association, doesn't matter. We look for those that really want to drive that systemic change in their region and vertical. We connect them with global peers. We bring them together in an international community, and we help them to access global resources that they need to make that ecosystem project they have in mind come true. And we pull in international partners that help them to scale these global resources, pull in even more of those. And the end result of an accelerator is the attraction of funding, right? So that's what our role as an accelerator is to help you getting from an idea to a sustainable organization that has its base funding and that can survive over time. So our goal is to get you from that early stage to the funding that you need to implement your ideas. This is how it works. Basically, we have the activation in the beginning, where we partner also with players like here Systems Innovation that are evangelizing this idea of system change, which is not, let's say, commonplace everywhere yet. So getting the idea out, we cannot do that alone. We are just a small organization. So everyone that speaks about system innovation, we love to partner with, come and speak at webinars like this and vice versa, so that more and more people get the idea that it's possible to do something about system change. Then we invite projects to apply to our 6-week program, which is an accelerator program for ecosystems. Then after these 6 weeks, we reach certain milestones of how the concept has to look like, what the partnership strategy is, what the fundraising objectives are. And we keep supporting the projects in the global community for 2 years. So there's peer support, but there's also central support offerings from Deep Ecosystems, so certain capabilities that Deep Ecosystems provides to each of the projects, so that they don't have the cost of creating, for example, research themselves, but they can use our central research team and other activities to grow faster and to put impact on the street from day one. And basically then when they are successful, we can use these experiences and bring it back into the community, have peer learning, learn from the success of others, learn from the failure of others, and similar to a startup accelerator, create a community that grows together. We see at the moment that 30% of the projects we accelerate actually raise funding. This is very promising. We've been running since 2020. Now we are in the 4th cohort. We have accelerated 48 ecosystem projects. Yes, let me share maybe a few examples. Here you can see one of our gatherings. Some of the participants, what they shared from the program, how they felt about this, and yeah, let me jump quickly in some of the examples. Very successful project in Ireland, a community for underrepresented startup founders, run by Leila Kahara, who is a very active community leader in Ireland, is now with Your Why Network, has managed to turn her community activities into something sustainable where she earns a living from. We have raised funding together. I think in her case that was slightly below 100K that she now has raised from public funds. So she's able now to do this professionally, while before it was a side project. And yeah, she's super active in our community as well. We have here Mike with Sampo Accelerator in Finland that's focusing on developing young entrepreneurial leaders. It's a very unique accelerator program that openly says if at the end of the accelerator you don't start a startup, it's still a success, because it's about developing your young the leadership capabilities in the individual. It's not so much about creating a successful startup, it's about the person. Food tech in Romania, food tech accelerator that is trying to attract international food brands to basically create a value chain of experimental and organic food production in the Apuseni Mountains in Romania. And yeah, here we have in Finland, Suvi from the Living Game Intelligence Network, that is a modular accelerator for gaming startups. When Suvi came to us, there was a huge crisis in the gaming scene in Helsinki, and they needed to reorientate. They lost a lot of sponsors that were before supporting it, and yeah, they came up with a new concept that helped to restart the ecosystem there. So yeah, these are just some examples that I wanted to share. You see, it always starts with the individual in our approach. So we take Suvi in, we take Razvan in, we take Leila in. They have an idea, they are ambitious, and our role is to help them make their dream come true and start their ecosystem initiative and put it on solid feet. And as you can see, in some cases this works very nicely, and we see then fantastic initiatives emerge from it. So yeah, it's a great initiative to be part of. So we are all very excited about it. We love what we do. And yeah, if you are also thinking about creating an ecosystem, we would love to hear from you. It's definitely worth having a chat. And if you join the community, then of course there's also more is possible.
Great, thank you, Thomas. Maybe you want to drop a link to your website into the chat there so people can follow up if they want to know more. So thanks a lot for those introductions. They're really great. I think they came from different kind of angles to the challenges. You're saying, Thomas, it's kind of bottom up what you're doing. You're working with those founders and really trying to support and nurture and develop those. And Christina, yours was a bit more kind of working across different organizations and bringing them together. So it's great to have different perspectives on that. Just to start the questions, maybe on a kind of high level, why do you think ecosystems? Why do we need this approach? Just to hear your ideas on that. What's the real value of taking an ecosystem approach? And I know, Thomas, I think you used to work for Microsoft kind of startups? And at what point did you actually shift from, creating another startup to thinking ecosystem level, and why did you go in that direction? But maybe start with you, Christina. What was your kind of insight around the need for this? You want to unmute? Yep.
Yeah, when we talk about system innovation, I think we automatically talk about ecosystems of players, because there's no system innovation that can be implemented by one individual player. And I think it also doesn't make sense to work on different parts of the system without having some kind of communication. So you're always talking about coordinating as an ecosystem of players. Where do you want to go? And and what are the different actions, different parts of the ecosystem, be it government or public sector or NGOs, can provide. So collectively, that ecosystem can move in that direction. At Endeva, we moved from a business model perspective. We started 15 years ago with looking at inclusive business models and innovation on a business model level. We fairly quickly moved to this ecosystem lens, because we recognize, and we work in a very specific context of poverty in Africa and Asia, where there's tons of constraints that businesses have to face. That the business model lens was too limited to really allow for scaling innovations, and that we always needed to take the other players, in particular government, but also large companies in these contexts, into perspective to get to scalable solutions. And I think it's the same in system innovations. When you work on the ecosystem level, you can enable several solutions, not just one. And that's, I think, the big difference and maybe what connects us. Handing over to Thomas with the startup perspective.
Yeah, and just to go to you, Thomas, because you were also working with the IT, right? And Climate Kick, we talked to them a lot. They're trying to address climate change here in Europe, and took that very traditional approach up until about 5 years ago of incubating more startups and more solutions and so forth. And then about 5 years ago, switched to this systems innovation approach, this ecosystem approach, recognizing that just creating more startups doesn't necessarily address a systemic challenge, and shifted to that kind of ecosystem systems innovation approach that they take these days. So yeah, going to you, what was your journey there? Because I think you did come from quite a traditional kind of startup background, didn't you?
Yes. I'm a startup guy, and I'm still a startup guy. So I believe in the startup model. I think that the realization that I had early on was that the single most important success factor for a startup is the ecosystem. And it's very curious. If you look at which startups become successful, it's often that they are geographically connected to places where startups have been successful before. And this is not because the air is better or the soil is better there. No, it's not like a single element that is in place there, but it's because you have an ecosystem that exchanges very closely, that works cooperatively and competitively to create a new market. And for that, you need proximity. You need like this exchange, also this arena there where these things are happening. And if that's not in place, it's very, very hard as a startup. If you're the only startup that wants to create a hydroponic market, you want to build the next innovation in hydroponics, I don't know, and you're the only one in your city, and there's no one around you, no one understanding you, the chances are that you don't understand your solution is not meeting the market demand. Chances are that no one is understanding the opportunity you're presenting. Chances are that you don't find talent that can work from day one and deliver value from day one, but you need to train people about what you're doing for 2 years. So you lose a lot of time, etc. So the ecosystem is really the summary of all of these effects. And if you don't have that in place, I realized the startups likely will fail. And then what you see is mobility. the solution is then that that startups move away from the place where they don't find the ecosystem and try to be as close as possible to places where the ecosystem emerges. And and that's unfortunately how things have run for quite some time. And we felt like ecosystems came from somewhere. No, they started from somewhere, and this must be something that can be replicated. But the ideas of copying Silicon Valley have all failed. So we need to try a new approach. We need to see how it can be done. And we believe that, I think, is a bit the I don't know how to say that. We are a bit more rough about this. We believe it's a disruptive process. We don't believe it's a collaborative process where you sit together, the leaders of the region, from the university, from the ministry, and sit them around a table and say, let's agree what the vision for our ecosystem is. And then afterwards, everyone shakes hands, agrees that they're going to build this. I think that's not the way how it's done. I think it's a disruptive process where someone has like a new way of doing things and it disagrees heavily with how things are done, and then says, I'm going to change it. I'm going to set up new rules. I'm going to create a new game. And if you are then outspoken about that and you lead that new development, you will disrupt and replace the old system. And that's my version of ecosystem building.
Yeah. So great point, but that's difficult, right? And what you're saying is, if someone's already broken that ground and they're already, a lot of startups out there, that whole thing's established, the ecosystem, it's so much easier for even that disruptor to grow and to talk to people, and they make sense to those people because they've seen other startups and they've seen that this works. That's what you're getting at, isn't it? Yeah. Great points around, collaboration, the challenges of collaboration, and sometimes you need disruption. Maybe quite often you need disruption, and maybe that collaborative approach doesn't always work. And that kind of dynamic between the two is pretty interesting. So getting to my favorite questions around, challenges, like why don't we do this? Why doesn't it work? What are the real challenges in doing this kind of work? And personally, what do you really struggle with when it comes to Thomas working with those founders and helping them build their ecosystems, and Christina, putting these collaborations together and trying to make that stuff happen? Where do you find the real challenges to this kind of work is? Maybe start with you, Christina. Yeah, you're on mute.
What are the challenges? I want to pick up on Thomas' challenge of you don't sit around a table and build a vision, you have to disrupt. And I like a controversy. I think it's always both. No, I mean, we also work always with innovators that put forward a disruptive solution. Solar seems, very an old shoe for us now, but in the countries we talk about, people still wait for the grid. Like the countries we work with, people would rather have the grid than a solar system on their roof. And the innovators that try to push for a solar approach and try to convince, just to use this example, they also try to disrupt and come up with new rules and put those forward. And then there's a moment where it's not the single innovator. There's several people trying to push this, but there's also a government that doesn't see the benefit, or, there's a lot of incentives to stick to the old game rules of the game. And there is when we find it helpful to actually put people around a table and say, look, don't we agree that, it would be nice for people in rural areas to have access to solar energy? And if we agree, how can we act jointly so they get there? And maybe on a higher level, I think, there's so much where we think, why don't we have these mobility systems and energy systems or food systems that we all want? Why can't we get there? Because we have all the innovation that we need. We have all the technologies that we need. It's often about this coordination issue. And to your question, Joss, what's difficult about these multi-actor collaborations is that this kind of distributed innovation where multiple actors need to act to get to a place where everybody wants to be. It's the classic prisoner's dilemma. If I don't move, if this guy doesn't move, then I'm not going to move. I'm not going to go forward with my investment in this research facility if I'm not getting that access to energy or whatever. So it's this chicken and egg problems that sometimes make it tricky. And if there's not the one actor, needs to be a powerful actor to drive what the group has agreed forward, then it can quickly come to an end because coordination itself is very costly. And then to our role as facilitators of collaboration, people like to, do this innovation processes, but then the coordination of implementing those actions is not something many people like to pay for. We're currently working in a large project with the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, where we play this role of the backbone organization for several years, and it's a multi-million-dollar project. And few donors have, the pockets to pay for that kind of facilitation. So I would say on the one side, it's this incentives, who has enough drive to really pull a whole system forward. And on the other hand, if you want to outsource it to a facilitator like us, who has the deep pockets to pay for that, that's the challenges that we face.
Great. I love that point you pick up on, really interesting dynamic there between enabling collaboration versus kind of disrupting and introducing something new into the system. When I'm teaching courses on systems innovation, we get to those sections where you're talking about collaboration and so forth. Someone always puts their hands up and says, well, what if they don't want to collaborate, right? What if you have a bunch of incumbents and they don't want anything to change? And that's quite often the case, right? And then I say to them kind of what Thomas says, in those cases, if people don't want to collaborate, you do need disruption, or you need to introduce something new into the system in some way. Whether it's disruptive or it has to create new value and attract them into a new way of doing things. And how disruptive that is, you could kind of discuss, but it's a great dynamic between, people collaborating versus that need for disruption. But to go back to you, Thomas, that question of the challenges you face in the work that you do, I know we had a conversation before. One of your big challenges, as you showed, is taking that founder from just initial ideas to actual sustainable kind of business model, sustainable ecosystem, right? And I was asking you, what's the thing that prevents them? And you were saying fear was a big part of that. I'd love to hear more about, the challenges you face there in terms of trying to get someone from that initial idea to a real ecosystem. And afterwards, maybe Yasmin will start our first question from the audience. Thomas.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and I think that I can subscribe to many things that were just said. So, obviously, the long-term commitment of donors and sponsors is a huge problem. Our solution or our answer to that is you need local ownership. You need you don't need a third-party facilitator that comes to the ecosystem and does it while they're getting paid. You need someone that does it to build their own career and build it in their ecosystem based on the funding they find in their ecosystem. The actual funding is always local. The funding that works is always local, even if that's less. It's nice to have someone like a foundation or the European Union or someone give you money for a grant, but this is not going to be your long-term funding with which you build your ecosystem. Your ecosystem needs to be creating value with the constituents that you serve with your ecosystem. That's why it's so important to be disruptive and to be focused on the buy-in of the willing, so the coalition of the willing that are going with you. And even if that's small in the beginning, and hopefully it can grow, but it's better to have little constant money than to have short-lived big money. This is a challenge. And the big issue that we have is entrepreneurs taking that route. Entrepreneurs love to go for the VC route, and few of them see an opportunity in creating the ecosystem. So we have still a lot of evangelization that's a difficult word, evangelization to get entrepreneurs to think about the systemic approach and say it could be worthwhile to take, for example, Station F in Paris as an example, to take, for example, Techstars, or to take Unternehmertum from Munich, or Maria 0.1 from Helsinki as an example. These are all organizations that have made commercial success by being focused on the system. And they were started by entrepreneurs. They were started by entrepreneurs. All of those that I mentioned, they are not started by institutions or corporates. They were started by people that had an idea and wanted to change the system. And I think this idea is not so common yet. No? So we love to have more entrepreneurs take that route, because they will be part of the success, of the real success of other entrepreneurs. And they will be enabling that, rather than wasting maybe attempts at half-baked startup ideas. It would make more sense to focus on something like this first.
Great. Yasmin, do you want to pick up on some of the questions then?
Sure, yeah, we have a few questions that were answered already, so I'm going to pick up the ones that are not answered yet. So we have one from Aldo Demur, from to both speakers. To what extent can we build versus grow ecosystems? In other words, how effective are planned interventions versus work with strengths, weaknesses of existing ecosystems?
Yeah, it's kind of touching on the theme here, I think. But maybe Christina, do you want to pick up on that?
Yeah, well, from our experience, wherever you go, whatever theme you touch, the players that are involved are already organized in some kind of ecosystem. They may, I mean, they know each other and they interact. So to us, it's always bringing the people that make up this ecosystem into the room and co-creating an agenda together with them. We also know, because we come from the development domain, these approaches, for those who work in this space, making markets work for the poor, more, I would say, technocratic approaches. You do your analysis, you understand the gaps, and then you fix the system. From our experience, that doesn't work, because without an active contribution of the players that are involved, yeah, they are just not going to buy into this. And where players are involved in co-creating their own evolution of their own ecosystem, usually they have that ownership, and they end up with that energy and dynamic to really take responsibility for those actions. So yeah, I would agree, you can't build from scratch, but you're always evolving on something that already exists.
Tomas, do you want to pick up on that?
Yes. Yes, ecosystem builder is a bit of a conundrum, if you will. Yeah, I think the ecosystem is a perspective. You use the ecosystem perspective to understand what's going on, right? So in that sense, you don't build an ecosystem per se. But if you do something and you do it with an ecosystem perspective, then I think that's ecosystem building, right? So I would just answer it like this. And I know that's not, but it's a philosophical question, but I would see it like this.
Yeah, maybe to pick up on that theme, how do you see the role of, Christina's saying, you can't really do it without those kind of incumbents. Without that, she says there's some ecosystem that's already existing, and you're saying about disruption and growing something new. What do you see the kind of interplay between that? It's never kind of either or. There's always going to be something there. There's always going to be something new introduced. Yes. How do you see that? What do you see kind of more of the role of that existing ecosystem?
Yeah, exactly. No, this is exactly right. If you are taking this ecosystem perspective, you discover the role of the other actors, and you need to be very aware of the collaborative and competitive space you are in. So you are never alone if you take the ecosystem perspective. You will not achieve a change in behavior if you're just focusing on your organization. So that's a given. And I think just that what the builder does in the disruptive part is that you need to first create something that makes sense, that sets the seed for an expansive system, that can pull in new actors and can incentivize the change of the system. You need to first be very true to that new proposal before you can talk with institutions, because institutions will have political motivations to change the core of what you want to do, right? So if you're not staying true to the new way of business that you want to establish, it's too early to start to talk to a ministry that then will say, yeah, but we have political goals that look like X, Y, Z. So first, you need to have a certain strength. You need to first disrupt the market so that people listen to you, and then you can have supporters coming in that are subscribing to your values and to your idea.
Yeah, I mean, I'd say that's one of my learnings in trying to do this, is just that thing of having a very clear value proposition, a very clear communication. When you reach out to people, particularly say incumbents, they want to know in a very tangible way, what this is and how it's a benefit and so forth, and how they can be involved if they want to be involved. Trying to go with fluffy stuff and idea to, those actors that are already there and have kind of set up kind of ways of working and so forth. If you can't speak to that, it really kind of goes nowhere. I would say that's my experience, right? And I think I've heard it from others that they have an idea, they reach out to lots of people, but they don't get anything back, right? And it's not until you really have something clear and really quite strong and really good communications that you'll actually, get good conversations. But Christina, do you want to jump in?
Yeah, I'm still clinging to what you said just before about incumbents not being able to collaborate, or this whole theme of collaboration. Maybe it ties in with where we are in the conversation, because I think it's at the core of the challenge, right? That kind of motivation to collaborate, whether you're the disruptor or whether you're the incumbent, and at the same time, this basic structure of the prisoner's dilemma: who moves first? When the, let's say, I'm an economist by training, so I'm thinking this in game theoretical terms, but I think you know what I mean. There's often the challenge when you need collaboration that it would make sense if everybody collaborated, but it doesn't make sense if I'm the one who steps forward first. And you said before, Joss, that then there needs to be disruption or something new has to come in. And I agree with that we've seen that a lot in how markets evolve. I wanted to share an example from our current work where we actually bring the big players into the room together to build the market. And I've seen in the conversation in the chat this idea of increasing the pie. I think that's a super important idea when we talk about building ecosystems. How do we enlarge the pie? So we're not always fighting about who gets the bigger piece of the pie, but how do we make the pie bigger together? The example is that a project we're doing with the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation around food fortification, so fortifying oil, flour, and sugar with vital vitamins and minerals. Many large nutrient producers such as BASF, DSM have been doing this individually for many, many years, supporting producers in countries to fortify their food. There's regulation. And the assumption was always that as long as there's mandatory regulation and we provide them with the training, the market will grow. But the market isn't growing, and people are not adhering to the regulation. What we found when we did our analysis in the beginning and talking to players is that the producers just don't have an incentive to fortify, because nobody is actually capable of checking whether they are compliant, and they're not getting anything more for their flour or oil that is fortified. People don't know what that means. So we brought together those large players that have been fighting and working individually and fighting for the bigger share of the pie, and looked together at that system dynamic and started to build a collaborative initiative out of that, because they realized, yes, no one of us has the ability to to change that dynamic. If we can change it, we can change it collectively through a kind of governance mechanism. So we self-regulate ourselves, and the millers will self-regulate themselves as well, and create transparency for the results of their production of flour or oil or whatever. And yeah, we're actually launching that tomorrow, no, Friday, as a new global initiative to drive food fortification forward. And it's been a 2-year process to get there, building all the governance structures and getting to alignment and actually speaking the same language around that topic. But I just wanted to share that as well, because I do think that these kinds of collaborative approaches work. But as I said, it takes time and effort to do this. And so it has to be worth it, right? It has to be a real problem that you can't fix in other way. Otherwise, that would be with Thomas, let's disrupt. If there's an innovative solution, you can just disrupt the market. Definitely go that route. But there are problems, I think, that need collaboration as well.
And when I think about it, and I think I agree, in some ways, the large established incumbents are almost the best people to make whole new markets. They're the ones that could create that equilibrium, like governments and regulation. But it's very rare that we actually see that, right? Normally what they create is some version of the old or some kind of big thing or something like this. So they would be the ideal actor to really step in and create these whole new markets, these whole new spaces, and settle that groundwork and everything. But typically they're not, right? They're caught in the old paradigm, and that's why you kind of need that disruption to some extent. I don't know how many here are familiar with the two loops model, but it's kind of what we're talking about, the old system and the new system emerging. In an ideal world, they work together synergistically, that incumbent actor. You might see it, I think, of the example of kind of corporate accelerators, right? They do a lot of bad things, have bad press, but they could be great things, right? A corporate really could be a great environment for enabling a startup to really be the next iteration of that business, of that industry, and so forth. Quite often it's not, it's a fake sort of thing they're doing, but they're in such a good position to really nurture and support something new coming into the world. So yeah, it's just to say that, and there's a whole spectrum of kind of dynamics there, from disruption to collaboration to, really making that work successfully, to really doing the opposite, complete resistance, right? We see in finance or things like this, complete resistance to new innovations. So I think we do see the full spectrum. Yasmin, one more question or two more questions for wrap up.
Okay, yeah, there's one more question here from Horia Sass. In your opinion, what are the ingredients that keep the ecosystems alive and grow in a long-term perspective?
Thomas, do you want to pick up on that?
Yes, I'm not muted. Great. So I just wrote in the chat a short answer to that. So we believe in something that we call minimum viable ecosystem. And a minimum viable ecosystem brings 4 elements together. That is the purpose. And the purpose here is not just like a mission statement. For me, a purpose is someone that puts his career on the line to build this. That's what shows purpose to me. If you see people that say, I'm going to put 30 years of my life into that, you need leaders, traditional leaders that broker trust, that get these ideas into the traditional society. Someone that invests maybe also in these leaders. You need cutting edge. You need some ideas that are really groundbreaking, something that's very, very new. It might be a new market, might be a new way of doing business that's attractive. And then finally, what you need is a community that doesn't need you to tell them to organize, but does it and create something by themselves. It's a resource that you can be involved with. And these are for us the 4 ingredients you need to see the emergence of an ecosystem. Yeah.
But actually, it's not only the emergence. It's not only the birth stage. Mm-hmm. I was referring to the evolving stage, the growth stage. Yeah. It's like in the startups. You build a startup, it launch a product, sells it, and then slowly dies.
Yeah, I think that's really question for Christina, because you were kind of touching upon that, weren't you, Christina, about the challenge of sustaining it, right, as you go along. Do you want to pick up on that?
Yeah, I thought before on the other question, what keeps it growing? It's success, right? Once, as long as it's successful, as long as it produces the desired outcomes, it will exist. If that stops, the ecosystem will just lose its purpose, I guess, and dissolve or reorganize for something else. But I think if the way I'm thinking about it as a collective of actors, you always, when you're trying to purposefully coordinate to get a result, you need to see success all the time. Otherwise, the motivation will fall away.
Well, we always see success, but we need this motivation. We need also this engagement. We need, this thing that keeps us connected to that thing. This might be great experiences to keep us excited. But I think that this could be a very good topic for another discussion, because that's quite important thing. And another one would be, to enable companies to transform and to become ecosystems for their stakeholders. It's a way of collaborating with their customers, partners, investors, and also to transform them in ecosystem members as users, like transforming a customer into a partner, or enabling the customer to become an investor as well, or a partner to become a customer, or an investor to become a customer. Because we see on the stock exchange, we see many investors.
Time's up, right? So we'll have to wrap up now. Thanks a lot for that. I think it's a good.
You got me started, guys. So that's why. But it's hopefully in a different session.
What sustains it over time is kind of what sustains all living systems, all ecosystems, right? Being open and bringing in new things and taking on those challenges and developing and growing, I would say. So here we are, out of time. It was a great conversation. Thank you for everyone who joined. We could go on. We only got to the first one or two of my questions. There are lots there, so there could be a second edition of this. If you're in London, we have a meetup next week, actually picking up on this theme again, talking more about topics we didn't get to today around kind of collaboration, also the challenges and opportunities there. But thank you very much, Thomas and Christina, for sharing your insights and different perspectives, and that emerging theme there around kind of bottom-up, top-down disruption versus collaboration and continuity was really, really interesting to see emerge. And we will wrap up here. Hope you have a chance to pick up on this topic again in the future. We'll share the video recording back into the network, and look forward to seeing you all again soon. Yeah. Thank you very much, Thomas.
Thanks for having me. Great conversation. Thank you, Joss and Jasmine. Thanks, Thomas. Bye.
And thank you. It was a pleasure.
Thank you all.